One of the questions I get the most in this channel is whether I think we'll see some old Greek characters again. My answer to this question hasn't really changed since God of War 2018 came out. I believe we'll definitely see Athena again in one way or another. This already seems to be the case, as God of War Fallen God seems to be hinting at her involvement in Kratos' life still. And maybe we'll see Zeus in some sort of flashback, given that he was such an important character in the previous games. But aside from these two characters, it's very unlikely that we'll see any of the other Greek characters again. But what if I tell you that maybe, just maybe, there is some hope for Atlas returning?
Perhaps you believe the Olympians will help you. But I ask, where are your gods now, Kratos? Why do they not come to your aid?
Hey, how's it going guys? Captain Kuba here, and I know what some of you are probably thinking. Kuba, why are you talking about Atlas again? Don't you have a 1-year-old video talking about the same topic? And the answer to that question is both yes and no. Yes, because that video is about my theories on how Atlas could have escaped the Underworld, seeking to kill Kratos for what he did to the Titans during the story of God of War 3. And no, because I didn't really provide any proof for my theories. They were just my ideas, as if I was one of the writers at Santa Monica Studios. But ever since I made that video, I've had the opportunity to do something every God of War fan should: read the novelizations of the games. Because as you'll soon find out, the writers of these books retell certain parts of the games in ways in which even hardcore fans of the series will find interesting. And in this case, it might even hint at the possibility of Atlas returning. But before I mention what the novel says about this topic, I need to make a disclaimer. It has been confirmed by Santa Monica employees that the first two novels are considered secondary canon. This means that if they contradict the story of the games in any way, they are not to be considered canon in those instances. I know this really undermines what I'm going to talk about in this video, but hey, I still find it worth discussing. So, everybody knows the ending of God of War 2, right? Athena sacrifices herself for Zeus, Kratos goes back in time to rescue the Titans and brings them to his timeline to destroy Olympus. It's an amazing ending without a doubt. Now, the novelization of God of War 2 gave us the same ending with a really interesting change. It reads, "Scores of Titans lumbered over the battle-scarred landscape and followed Gaia and the others already beginning their assault when Atlas gave the command. His hands smashing down on the ground to cause another earthquake, his forearms wrapped in chains." The first thing I find out about this sentence is that it seems to imply that the Atlas mentioned here is the same one who gave Kratos his powers. How do I know this? Because the writer mentions his arms being wrapped in chains. This Atlas doesn't have chains wrapped around his arms, but this one does. This is quite brilliant by the writer, because you can actually see Atlas being defeated by Poseidon and Hades right before Kratos rescues the Titans. So this sentence is implying that after Kratos rescued the Titans, they made a stop at the Underworld, rescued Atlas, then proceeded to attack Olympus. The second thing I find out about this detail is that it didn't happen in the game at all. After reading this novel, I went back to the ending and watched it at the lowest speed possible, and I couldn't find Atlas anywhere. This, coupled with the fact that Atlas is nowhere to be seen in God of War 3, and it makes me think the writer simply added this because he wanted to. But the real question is, why? The God of War 2 novel came out in February 12, 2013, 3 years after God of War 3 had been released. Why then would the writer be so bold as to include something in the ending that obviously didn't happen? I know this is not a mistake because he already showed his knowledge of the games by mentioning the chains wrapped around Atlas' arms. Why would he do this then? This is exactly the question I asked Bruno Velasquez, the animation director at Santa Monica Studios, but sadly he hasn't replied yet. This is understandable since Santa Monica employees are busy making the next game in the series, but it does mean I'll have to give you what I think to be the most likely answer regarding this departure from the story. I personally would like to believe this was some kind of hint left by Santa Monica Studios back in 2013. I say this because the novel was released exactly 1 month prior to the release of God of War Ascension. So it's possible Santa Monica was workshopping ideas about a possible sequel for God of War 3 that included the return of Atlas as an important character, maybe even the villain of the series. If this turns out to be true, then it's entirely possible Santa Monica worked with the writer of the novel to leave a hint to Atlas' return at the end of the book. This would get fans of the series hyped for future games again, as well as easing them into this big change in the story. Again, this is just what I want this sentence to mean, not necessarily what I believe. The most likely answer is simply that the writer wanted to add this to the end because it made it more exciting. I come to this conclusion because this is not the only change the first two novels make to the story of the games, hence the previously mentioned disclaimer. Now I will say that this change has the most serious implications for the story, And if you guys want, I can make a video detailing every change the first 2 novels made to the games, so you know what I'm talking about. But for the time being, the mystery of this sentence will remain just that, a mystery in the God of War franchise. Unless Bruno replies to me, in which case I'll pin his answer at the top of the comment section. But for now, make sure to let me know what you guys think about this topic. Do you think this was Santa Monica's way of teasing the return of Atlas back in 2013? Do you think this was just a writer getting creative? Whatever your thoughts are, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. With that said, I want to thank all of my members for supporting the channel monthly. People like Young G, Max Ford Gaming, and Jeffrey Elswick, to name a few, are the main reason I can call YouTube my job. None of this would have been possible without your support. I would also like to thank everyone who likes and shares my videos. It doesn't seem like much, but it really does help. And with that said, thanks for watching. And remember, go forth in the name of Ragnarok.